The 2024 NHL draft is in the books, and before I dive into the draft as a whole and break down who won, who lost, who had the best picks and the worst ones, I'm going to break down how my Washington Capitals did on draft weekend, both in terms of the picks that they made and the trades that they made. That's right, this season I'm trying to do a little bit more Caps-focused content for all my Caps fans out there. So if you are a fan of the Washington Capitals, go ahead and click the subscribe button, because I'm going to be doing a lot more Caps-focused content. Still going to be doing a lot of the NHL content, like breakdowns, insights, and historical videos. But for the more of the news stuff, it's going to be Caps focused. And for this weekend, let's get into the big trade first. That was the Caps sending a 2025 second round pick to Calgary for forward Andrew Mangiapane. In Mangiapane, the Caps are getting a middle six winger who has some offensive upside. Last year, he had 14 goals and 40 points. His career best was in 2021-22 when he had 35 goals and 55 points. So a little bit more on the scoring side. In his career in Calgary, he's averaged to be about a 20-goal, 40-point guy. From a value perspective, I really like this trade. I think that Mangiapane could have fetched a second-round pick in this year's draft and maybe even a little bit more than that based on my historical trade charting. So I think getting him for a second-round pick next year when the Caps already have 3 second-round picks is just good business. So I do think Max started off the weekend strong, and I'd give him like an A grade for that Mangiapane trade. Then at pick 17 overall, the Caps stayed at 17 and decided to take Tarik Perisic. And my reaction at the moment, and even now more so when I've dug into this a bit, is I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest reaches to the first round. I do not like this pick at all, especially when you had Cole Eiserman sitting there, a much better prospect in my opinion, who I think is a lot more NHL ready than Perisic. Now I will say that there are a lot of scouts who are very high on Perisic. I even saw that Byron Bader had him in his top 10, and a lot of scouts really love his intelligence and his playmaking ability. But the knock on him is that there are some physical limitations. He's not the best stick handler or skater. He's going to need time to develop, which doesn't really square with where the Caps are. They're still kind of in a little bit of a win-now window, and Cole Eiserman helps you with that a lot more than Perisic. And what's more, I'm more confident that Cole Eiserman is going to end up being a really good NHLer than I am with Perisic. And Eiserman went in division to the New York Islanders, so we're going to have to feel the effects of that decision for maybe a decade. And if you didn't want Eiserman and you really wanted Perisic, you could trade back and add more assets. Overall, I'd give that Perisic pick like a C-D+ grade. Really not a fan of it, especially given who was still on the board. Before the second round, McClellan actually made a trade to acquire a pick by trading away Beck Malenstein to the Buffalo Sabres for pick number 43. And I have seen a lot of Buffalo Sabres fans saying that they think that this is a fair trade and that Malenstein adds a lot of what they need to their bottom six. I think those fans are delusional. I think that this is an absolute fleecing. Malenstein is just a role player and a third-line player at best. He was worth, by my trade charting, like a 4th round pick this year, maybe like a 5th round pick, and you get a 2nd round pick back for him. You laugh all the way to the bank if you're Brian McClellan. That's an A+ trade for the Caps. Incredible value that they got for a player who you could pick another guy as good or better than him off the scrap heap from Hershey, like Dubé or Snively. They got basically a premium asset for nothing. Now, as much as I didn't like the Perisic pick, I was much happier with what Mac did with our 2nd round pick, taking Cole Hudson out of the USHL at pick 42. To me, this is an outstanding pick. There were 4 mock drafts that had Hudson as a 1st round talent, with 2 having him as a top 20 talent. So getting him at pick 43 is a really good move by Brian McClellan. I know that there are concerns about his size, but there are those concerns about his brother Lane as well, and he's become one of the best prospects in the Montreal Canadiens club. And according to a lot of scouts, Cole is even further ahead than his brother was at the same age. So to me, really good pick in the 2nd round. Give this one an A grade as well. The Caps then used their second round pick, number 52, on defenseman Leon Mugli. And I do like the strategy, picking a Swiss defenseman like Mugli, who is very physical and responsible in his defensive zone. And his average draft ranking was about 55, so it's about equivalent value as to where the Caps picked him versus where the consensus says he should have been picked. However, I have to knock this down a little bit just because of the guy who got picked at number 53, Leo Saline Wallenius, who I really liked and I thought was a fringe 1st round pick, as did a lot of people. He was consensus grade as the 40th best player in this draft. So I'm only going to give this pick for Mugli a B-, just because I think that they could have gotten more value at this spot by taking Saline Wallenius or even guys like Teddy Stiga and Camille Bendardic, who went later on in the 2nd round. Before we get to the Caps' 3rd round picks, we have to address the trade they made involving a 3rd round pick. They sent a 3rd round pick, number 83 in this year's draft, and a 3rd round pick in next year's draft to the Vegas Golden Knights to acquire goaltender Logan Thompson. And to me, this is just exceptional value here by the Washington Capitals. They get a goaltender who's in his mid-20s, who has a career save percentage of .912 and a career GAA of 2.67, who has an incredibly cheap cap hit, like the cheapest possible cap hit for just a couple of third-round picks. This is an incredible deal by McClellan. I'd actually give this one an A+ for the Caps. Now, in the third round, the Caps did use pick number 75 to take Ilya Protas, the brother of Alexei Protas. And on top of this being a really wholesome moment for the Protas family, I actually really like the value of the pick here. Most drafts had him mocked in the 80s to 90s, and the Caps take him at 73, so it's not the end of the world, a little bit of a reach, but I'll still give it a B+ because it gave us some really wholesome moments. Then the Caps used their other pick at number 90 in the third round to take Eric Smitejko. Now, while it's not quite as sexy or heartwarming as the Protas pick, I feel basically the same way as I did about Protas. This is equivalent to value to where he was mainly mocked. Kind of the same tools as Protas, very big, takes up a lot of space in front of the net, incredible reach, very physical. So they basically took two of the same guy in the third round, hoping one of them hit. So I'll give the Smitejko pick a B. Now in the fourth round, the Caps did exactly what I hoped they would do, and they took a dart throw on a goalie, Nicholas Kemp, out of the U.S. development team. Pick 114 is right around where he was mocked to go, and I'm a big believer that goalies are a lot like running backs in the NFL. You should always take a dart throw on one in the mid-rounds, see if one of them develops into a superstar, and who knows, maybe we'll find the next Braden Holtby for our organization. So I give the Kemp pick up a B+. I won't go too much into Peter Sikora and Miroslav Satan Jr., the Caps 6th and 7th round picks. These are dart throws. I don't really think that they passed up on any big opportunities, and even if these guys are a little bit off the board of the consensus, so late in the draft, it's really not going to affect things too much. So overall, I think that Brian McClellan did a pretty good job in this draft. I still don't like the Paraskevich pick, but the Hudson pick, the Malinin trade, the Logan Thompson trade, and the Ilya Protas picks all offset that in my eyes and then some, so I'd have to give the draft grade for the Caps like a B+. All things told, very happy with the direction of this organization, even though I still can't stand the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. And I think the Caps are gonna next year surprise some people.